Go ahead. Thank you, Maya.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Annie, for inviting me to your meeting. My name is Maya Gonzalez. I'm a retired educator, a caregiver for my disabled granddaughter, and out of necessity, have become an advocate and organizer. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, that slide. Nope. You've probably heard the terms disabled and special needs used interchangeably. For the most part, disabled is the term that's preferred by the disabled community, and special needs is a term used in conjunction with special education services and supports. As you know, OST and after school, as one word, are both used when referring to programs, and after school, two words, describes when the programs occur. The term inclusion can also cause confusion, as it is often used to describe a program rather than a mindset. Today, I'd like to share some basics regarding our disabled students' access to after-school programs. Next slide. This is my granddaughter, Annalise. Other than the first upper left-hand corner photo and the bottom right-hand photo, these are activities that she participated in on weekends and not after school. We had to arrange her involvement in activities in order for her to have inclusion in sports, to get exercise, and to enjoy community life. Annalise has autism and an intellectual disability. She was in a substantially separate classroom while she attended King Open and the Cambridge Street Upper School. She is now 14 and in the 9th grade. And like many other disabled students at CRLS, she could be at the high school for the next 8 years until age 22. We want her to be able to participate in and benefit from the recreational and social activities that other CRLS students enjoy. With support from the Inclusion Initiative, Annalise was able to attend the King Open Extended Day program for the last 2 months of 3rd grade and during 4th grade. As she developed new friendships and participated in fun activities, we watched her confidence and communication skills grow. Clearly, the opportunity to generalize social skills outside of the school environment positively impacted her overall development. Sadly, Annalise has not been able to participate in any OST or after-school program during 5th grade and all throughout middle school. Even though she had inclusion support in 2016-17, a shortage of inclusion facilitators left her on a waiting list for several years until in 2020, programs closed down due to COVID. Because inclusion supports are only provided until age 14, she has now aged out. Next slide. After retiring from teaching in 2012, I became Annalise's daily after-school caregiver so that my daughter, her mother, could finish college and work. I am now in my 70s, and my daughter recently decided to quit her job because she was concerned that caregiving responsibilities were affecting my health. Other families of disabled students are facing similar challenges. The limited availability of adequate and appropriate after-school options impacts many parents' ability to work full-time. Because they must be at home to provide after-school care, some parents of exceptional children find themselves part of the working poor or dependent on state support. In November 2020, when I learned that the Equity Collaborative would be funding projects which addressed issues of equity in Cambridge, I applied for a fellowship. Clearly, limited access to out-of-school time opportunities for students with disabilities or special needs is an equity issue. During this last year, I've been collecting articles, reviewing research, referencing state and federal guidelines, networking with similarly concerned parents and community members, and brainstorming how to be effective in communicating the need for improvement. Cambridge's Special Education Parent Advisory Council, CPAC, the members are extremely supportive and provide me with helpful feedback and suggestions. Cambridge prides itself on being inclusive and diverse, yet our resource-rich city presently offers very few after-school options which can meet the unique and diverse needs of our exceptional children. Even though there are federal and state laws which require equitable access to school and community activities, and research clearly supports the multiple benefits of after-school programs for disabled students, inadequate programming limits our students' access to recreation, social interaction, physical exercise, and fun. Next slide. Here is some of what we already know about Cambridge. Take a few minutes to read through this slide, and if you have other info from your own experiences, that should be added here. Please put it in the chat. What has happened so far? Well, in March and April, 2 other CPAC members and I met with representatives from DHSP, the Inclusion Initiative, and the Agenda for Children. During these meetings, I described the impacts that inadequate after-school options are having on disabled students and their families. I also emphasized the importance of developing an after-school equity working group, which should include caregivers, students, OST, and after-school program staff, and key city and school department representatives. Only a diverse group of stakeholders with a range of experiences and perspectives will be able to holistically examine what the barriers are and make recommendations for change. Next slide, please. Some suggestions we made for an after-school equity working group include a needs assessment. And part of that is today's provider survey. We also plan to gather information from caregivers and students via surveys and interviews, and request data from the school department and the city. Currently, a slideshow is being put together so we can share how state and federal civil rights, education, and disability laws clearly protect disabled students' rights to participate in and have access to out-of-school and extracurricular activities. Meaningful systemic change can only be created in a true culture of caring. This will require acknowledgement and ownership from policymakers. It will also require input from and the participation of all stakeholders, caregivers and students, as well as OST providers and community groups. Parents, caregivers, and students should always have a seat at the table when barriers to inclusion and access are being discussed. We must lead conversations about and help find solutions to problems which are not always evident to those who are not personally affected. We are hoping that OST providers, the school department, and the city will work with us to seek solutions. Thanks.
All right, so thank you so much, Maya. Maya has a lot of knowledge and expertise and just a ton of time also talking to other families in the city about this. And working with her, we put together this sort of list of partly what we think OST providers should know. And then after that, we're going to do a brief discussion before we go into groups to do her survey together, which would really help forward this work. So one of the things that we want folks to know is that the accuracy of the needs assessment partly depends on your honesty as people on the ground of like both what your experience has been, whether it's trying to serve families with disabilities or what your experience with your organization's policies has been. It is going to be an anonymous survey, but there's a spot for you to identify your organization if you feel comfortable. We want to be clear that we're not here to throw stones, but we're trying to figure out where we need to improve in order to meet disabled students' needs. Part of what we found, and that Maya has specifically found, is that there's often just a disconnect between partly what written policies look like and the experiences of families and people working in programs. The other thing she really wanted to be clear to know is that there are so many possibilities besides just the inclusion support. So Maya, for those of you guys who know Nicole Horton, who runs the Inclusion Initiative, Maya has been working with her since the beginning. And that one model is really the big step that the city has made, but is only one of multiple different options for families and young people. There's clubhouses. There's a really great section of examples that Maya has put together in this link right here. That is part of her Equity Collaborative project that shows some examples of what those look like. She also wanted to make clear that parents might not be asking about access for their kids. So just because your door is not being knocked down with parents looking for disability access to after school, that doesn't mean that there's no demand for it. There's many reasons why families have gotten the message that this isn't something that they're sort of allowed to ask for, or it's not something that's available in the city. That's why doing this needs assessment step is important. The other thing we just wanted to be clear, going back to that very first cartoon video, is that inclusion is a mindset and it's not just a program or a methodology. Like equity for access here doesn't just mean having one program that they could all go to. It means actually having options and options that meet the needs of multiple families. And the really big point here, which I don't think is lost on anybody, is that this is a very similar to the mindset for other issues. So when we talk about trying to figure out who's missing in your programs and think about how to recruit from a broader standpoint, how to take down barriers to scholarship access, all of that is partly about saying like, inclusion doesn't just mean saying, here's a program for everyone else that, okay, you can come join. Inclusion means saying like, let's actually create a program that is designed for everybody to be able to join in. So it's not about bringing, 3 Black kids into a program that's all white kids and designed for the needs and interests of those white kids. It's about being able to actually design something that's for all and understanding the barriers that keep people from doing that. And so this is a very similar thing. And just like in those issues, having options for everyone really benefits everyone. So we're going to pause for just a quick discussion. The 2 questions we're curious about is just like first reactions or anything that really clearly anybody would really want to know more about. Like, what's your first response to this info and what do you want to hear more about? So I'm going to open it up. Feel free to unmute yourself or to write in the chat. We're just going to spend a couple minutes doing that before we send you guys into groups. You're going to be doing the survey itself in groups of 3. And I'm going to stop the recording at this point.